Hello everybody, this is Chris. Before we actually dig into what this course is hoping to accomplish in terms of M-portfolios, e-learning, and everything else, I do want to dig up a presentation I made a couple years ago to a group of educators in Wisconsin regarding on how adults learn. Because everything we're doing in our courses, in where we're going and what we're doing, have to do with how adults learn and adult learning. So let's just go through a couple things, and hopefully this will help set the stage in what we're hoping to accomplish. One of the things we have to be aware of is the average retention rates for adults in after a 24-hour period. This actually was done through a study through the National Training Laboratories in the 1960s. It doesn't make much sense that things haven't changed since then, but the study was repeated in 2004 by another university, and the same principles still apply. So it's actually amazing that over the course of 40-some years, the principles of the retention rates have not changed. They've just varied depending on the media. So the retention rate for lecture, in other words, if you're standing in front of the room talking to students, or if you're a student just being talked to by itself, is 5% after 24 hours. If you read it rather than just hear it, it's 10%. Let's do a little bit of both, audio-visual. Like this, perhaps this PowerPoint could be classified in the audio-visual category. Okay, that we're talking 20%. If you watch a demonstration of something, a hands-on demonstration, like you are taking your students into a lab or a shop and you are gathering them around something and you're showing them how to work with a widget, okay, that is 30%. Discussion groups, either in person, a group of people sitting around a round table talking about a topic and having dialogue, or actually written discussion groups on a platform such as Moodle, okay, or Blackboard, any of the other platforms. People remember 50% of the material that's covered there. Now, we get better when we go up to the practice by doing. Okay, in other words, someone who practices a skill by doing it, for example, a shop project in a lab, okay, or a clinical, where they're being mentored by the instructor, and I'm using this key words, mentored and instructor, okay, you're practicing by doing. Now, even better is if you can use that learning that you've gotten up to this point, either through audiovisual demonstrations, practice by doing, and if you can immediately turn around and teach it to somebody else, you'll regain 90% of those skills 24 hours later. And it's usually that first 24 hours where it becomes important and people lose their skills. So these are very key points we need to remember as we're planning classroom activities. Now, we've all heard the word pedagogy. It's been part of our training at Porter and Chester and possibly YTI for years. Okay, pedagogy is actually the art and science of teaching children. Andragogy is a newer science. Well, I want to say newer to us, not newer to education in general. It's the art and science of helping adults learn. Now, there's a key word in difference here: teaching and helping. And we'll get more into that in a minute. But andragogy was introduced by a gentleman named Malcolm Knowles, who was a researcher in the 1960s. He introduced it in 1968. Again, this is specifically to working with adults. There are some differences between adult learners and young learners or child learners. Okay, child learners like things that are subject orientated. We separate out math. We separate out science. They are future orientated. Okay, in other words, they want to know what the future is. Okay, they will accept studying. You will need this when you grow up. Okay, they depend on adults for direction because really they can't direct themselves. Well, I don't want to say that because they do, And they can be set with that expectation that they have to direct themselves, but more often than not they depend on adults for directions. They're very accepting, and the younger they are, the more accepting they are of information just being given to them. They will accept a teacher saying it is because it is. Okay, they'll accept that teacher as an authority figure. They do get trained for an unclear future. When you're in grade school and even junior high, you really don't know what your future holds for you. Only when you're in the later years of high school do you actually have some sort of clearer picture of what the future holds for you. And they're dependent on others. Okay, they're dependent on making sure that someone gets them out of bed. They're dependent on the fact that they are going to school. They're going to board that yellow bus outside the driveway or take that walk. Or more and more be dropped off at the school's front entrance. Okay. Now, adult learners, on the other hand, have a whole different set of issues. Okay. Adult learners are very problem-centered. By that we mean they want to know how to put their skills to use to solve an issue. Okay, that issue may involve more than one subject, but they want to know how to solve the issue. That's because they are very result-orientated. Okay, they want to know what is in it and what am I going to be able to do with it that applies to the skill I'm trying to get. They're very self-directed. Okay, if they don't see a need for it, they're not going to show up for it. They're not going to partake if they don't see a need. They're very skeptical about new information. Okay, it comes back to this is the way I've always done it. This is the way I'm going to continue to do it. And it's a very skeptical situation. They're going to want to verify that what you're telling them is correct. They want to know how it's relevant, so they seek relevancy. Okay, I can't just walk into an adult education class form and say, okay, today we're going to learn fractions. Okay, they want to know why they have to learn fractions. They want to see how learning this extra thing or remembering how to do this from when they were taught before applies to their future in the field of their choice. Okay, so everything they need, everything that they have presented to them has to apply in some way, and they have to see how it applies. They do accept responsibility for their own learning. Regardless of what you see in your classroom, if you push and shove and actually back them into a corner where they have no choice but to accept the responsibility or continue to blame someone else, they will eventually accept responsibility for what they did or did not do. Okay, that is only if you have met everything else on this list. So there are some real differences between the adult and the young learners or the child learners. So when we come down to pedagogy versus andragogy, we also have to remember something else. Pedagogy, you have the authority figure of the instructor, okay, and there's a one-way flow of information. You're the authority, they're the students, they're absorbing the information of what you're giving them. Andragogy puts this a little bit of a different. Believe it or not, the entire principle of andragogy is learning happens in all directions. Okay, I'll tell you right now that this course we're about to teach, I learn also from, just like you hopefully will get something out of it. Okay, I actually sometimes think I get more out of these courses than people who are going through it, which is actually a great feeling to have. But learners in andragogy are really almost on the same platform and on the same playing field as their guide or their mentor is. Okay, I take the word teacher out of it. Pedagogy, we have teachers and instructors. Andragogy, or the study of adult learning, we have mentors, guides, facilitators. It's a very important difference in concept. And again, because everyone is on a level playing field. So what do we really need to know about adult learning? Okay. There's 6 assumptions. Now notice it's not called theories, it's called assumptions. The 6 assumptions are adult learners have a self-concept. They like learning from their own experience. They are ready to learn. They wouldn't have walked into your classroom if they weren't ready to learn. Okay, they have an orientation to learning. They have a motivation to learn, and they need to know. Okay? Self-concept basically means adults are actively involved in decisions that affect themselves. Okay? They know they want to study ABC. Okay? Or let's say widget assembly. Okay? So they know they have to go to school to get the skills in widget assemblies. So they've made a decision that affects themselves. Adults come into educational activities with experience. You can't take away their experiences they've had in the rest of their lives. It's an important part of what they're doing and what they're bringing to the table. Adults are ready to learn. Okay? They wouldn't have walked into the classroom. They need to learn. They need new information to cope effectively with life situations. Okay? For example, they cannot go repair an HVAC system or a car or a person without having the skill set to do that work, so they know they have to learn. Adult learning and experiences, okay, should be structured around life situation. They have to know why they're getting that knowledge. They have to be able to say, okay, I am studying this because it allows me to do that in real life. So it's real life situations they have to be able to know that their learning is going to. Adults are motivated by internal pressures. Okay, quite honestly, and I've actually, if you've read my welcome letter or the welcome handout to this course, adults are not motivated by grades. Okay, yeah, grades in our school sometimes are like money, but the bottom line is a student who gets an A or a B, I mean, it really is not that much of a thing. That's an external pressure. They're motivated by their internal pressures. It's based on what they want to do. And if you can harness that internal motivation, you can get an adult to get to any level that you set the bar. Adults have to recognize the necessity of learning something prior to starting the process of learning. Okay, we seem to a lot of times set up our courses where we start to spoon feed from the back. Okay, we talk about little parts that build to something, okay, bigger. Adults like learning that starts with the big picture and then breaks down into all these little components. So when you look at courses and stuff like that, are we telling them why they need to know something to start with? Sometimes not, and that can actually end up into the adult doesn't know why. They can't see the relevance, and if they don't see the relevance, they will not show up. Okay, so all of this has implications for teaching, affects our goals for learning, affects what is learning, it affects on how we enhance learning, and it also talks to us about how the brain works. So one of the goals for higher education, okay, now they go beyond just transmitting knowledge. Okay, goals for higher education, and we are part of the higher education system, is to help the students develop cognitive structures, skills, strategies, and motivation for continued learning and problem solving. Okay, this is back in the 1986s. In the 1980s, this has gotten so much more important because our world continues to evolve. Our students have to be able to think outside the box. You think inside the box, and in that old factory mindset, it just doesn't work in today's world anymore. There's so much out there and it's constantly changing and evolving. Okay, so how do we understand learning today? We know that humans actively create knowledge. Okay, we know that knowledge is not passively received. Okay, humans have to be a part of creating their knowledge. We know that previous knowledge shapes new knowledge. Okay, you build upon what you know. You build upon what other people know. We know that new knowledge shapes subsequent knowledge. Okay, it's a stepping stone. It continually grows, and it can grow within an individual, it can grow within a trade, or it can grow within a discipline, but it continuously grows. For those of you who've been through some sort of a bachelor's program, a master's program, or even a doctorate program, you know that one of the things you're expected to do as you advance in education is to bring new knowledge into the existing knowledge through publications, through discussions, for doing seminars and stuff like that. So it just continues to evolve. Okay? Learning's not a spectator sport. Students do not learn just by sitting in class listening to teachers, memorizing prepackaged assignments and spitting out answers. Okay? This is actually a study that has actually been done in a number of places. And what's really amazing is the K through 12, we had No Child Left Behind. Now we have the Common Core curriculum, and it goes against every single thing that is good educational principle. Okay, and studied. Students must be able to talk about what they're learning. They need to be able to write about it. They need to be able to relate it to past experiences and apply it in their daily lives. They must make what they learn a part of themselves. In other words, they must live, breathe, and eat, drink, and sleep what they're learning to get it. Okay, and that's part of what we're trying to do when we talk about M portfolios, when we bring the electronics into the classroom, when we talk about videotaping things, when we talk about publishing videos on their portfolios, which we're all going to talk about in this class as we move forward. Learning is enhanced when learners are asked to state the information in their own words, give examples of it, recognize it in various guises and under different circumstances, see connection between it and other facts and ideas. Again, it's not subject matter. It's solving a problem. They need to be able to look and see what it relates to. They need to be able to look and see what the knowledge, what the consequences of that knowledge is. They need to state its opposite or converse about it. They need to be able to talk about it. Okay. The single most important influencing factor of learning is what the learner already knows. Figure this out and teach him accordingly. Not a new concept. This is a quote from Usable in 1968. Okay. We're already talking about, this has been talked about with the idea of scaffolding or zones of proximal knowledge. But we need this learning to continue and move forward. There are some barriers to knowledge, to learning as well. Okay? Some of the barriers are students with low self-esteem. Okay? Unwillingness to ask for help, lack of confidence, uncertain motivation, inattentiveness or lack of attendance or participation, underdeveloped study skills, poor listening skills. They could also have anxiety or fear, inadequate knowledge, low self-expectations, domestic, financial, or personal worries. That's a big one in our world. Physical, mental, or health conditions, specific learning disabilities. All of these can actually be a barrier to learning. Now, one of the biggest things here, when you look at the barriers of learning, which one of these can you overcome in a classroom? You can pump up someone's self-esteem by continuously giving them, good job, attaboy, or you got it right. Okay? Unwillingness to ask for help, got to look for that struggling learner, because you can tell in a classroom or in a shop or in a lab when someone doesn't get it. Lack of confidence, that comes with time. That's practice. Low or uncertain motivation, they're not seeing the relevance. Okay? That's on the instructor. Okay, they gotta see the relevance, and by instructor I mean anybody involved in the instructional process. Inattentiveness or lack of attendance or participation comes back to one of these. Okay, they don't see the value, they won't attend. Poor listening skills, anxiety or fear, inadequate. All of this can be addressed in a classroom. Need to shift the focus from teaching to learning. Okay, we got to do these things. Implications. We need to use techniques that help students create meetings. And as I said earlier, both the students and faculty are learners. Then we need to teach to the brain. Emotions are a key to learning. Okay, an enriched learning environment is a primary thing. We have to expect more from ourselves and our students. Problem solving must be a way of classroom life. The big picture is important, and we need to eliminate threats. This comes back to my feeling about grading. Grading is a threat. It's a threat of failure. Okay, it can knock down someone's self-esteem. But the big picture is very important here. There's some really good ways to enhance learning. If you want deep approach, okay, if you want deep learning, the students have to have previous knowledge of a topic. They have to have perceived relevance. They have intrinsic skills, and they have good study skills. Okay, department influences are matching content and knowledge, good teaching, and opportunities for individual choice and study skills training and support. If you just want surface learning, you allow the student to have fear of failure, anxiety, reliance on memorization, or external motivation. Okay, from the department, the thing that supports surface learning is short answer and multiple choice questions. You can have heavy workload and overloaded curriculum. You spoon feed through handouts and you have a lack of relevance or choice. Now, we want our students to have a deep learning. Okay, so when you look at your curriculum, when you look at how you're teaching, go for the deep learning. That's what we want to encourage. When we talk about learning, we talk about the adult learning theory. Things fall into this. This whole chart falls into it. A learner has to evaluate their own learning. They have to formulate and own their learning objectives. They have to diagnose what they need to learn. They have to help plan what they're going to learn, and they have to establish an effective learning environment, and they have to identify and devise strategies for using resources. This all plays into a combined effort between the learner and the instructor. So what we want with the adult learners, we want some self-direction in their learning. We want the self-efficacy. We want constructionism. We want reflective practice. All of these four components come together for the ideal adult learning environment. Okay, self-directed learning is organizing teaching so the learning is within the learner's control. Okay, we need to set a goal towards what the learners strive so they'll be able to accept responsibility for their own learning. Okay, what is the goal for the week? What do you hope to get out of it? What is your objective for this week, and why is it important? That's all very important stuff for self-directed learning. Now, self-directed learning does not mean that you let your class run wild and do whatever they want. It means that you help them set a goal. And again, I'm saying you help them set a goal. What are we going to accomplish this week? Now, it's okay if you say what we're going to accomplish this week, but they have to buy into it. Okay? There was a researcher, Bandura, who suggested that people's judgment of their own ability to deal with different situations is central to their actions. Okay? The judgment may or not be accurate, okay, but they use four sources. Okay? They will observe others. They'll listen to verbal persuasion. Their psychological state, in other words, their state of well-being, and they also want to achieve performance attainments. All of this falls into their self-efficacy. The roles for the teacher in this is you need to be able to model and demonstrate. You need to set a clear goal or image of the desired outcome. You need to provide basic knowledge and skills needed as the foundation for the task. You need to be able to provide guided practice with corrective feedback. You need to give students the opportunity to reflect on their own learning. Okay, Constructionism is also, as we talked about, on the four things. Okay, the primary idea of Constructionism is that the learners build their own knowledge, okay, based on what they already know. So when you have a first-term student coming in, you don't know what they know, but you got to figure it out relatively quick so you can show relevance to what they already know. Okay, the learning is active rather than passive. Learners make judgments about when and how to modify their knowledge. Okay, so the old paradigm in learning was that there was a finite amount of knowledge to be absorbed. The experts are recognized by knowing what they should know. The learning starts by contacting an authority. Uncertainty is discouraged and ignorance is avoided. Experts have not the knowledge, they're on the top. And I showed this to you in an earlier diagram. The new paradigm in learning, and this is where we need to go, it's not possible to absorb all the knowledge on a subject. This is why, like in my welcome note to the course, I said, you are not the expert on everything that goes on in your classroom, because there's no way you can absorb all the knowledge out there on a subject. There's always learning going on. Experts are recognized by knowing what they don't know and knowing how to manage what they don't know. Learning starts in practice, okay? People learn from their own mistakes. Learning uncertainty and learning by questioning. It's okay to question. It's okay to be unsure, because that's how you learn. Experts find solutions. Okay? That's the other thing. Experts find solutions, but they're on tap. There's a difference here, and that's not a misspelling. You go onto the web and you can find an expert out there on everything. Okay? You just have to know who to ask. They're on tap. So active learning is key. Your role as an instructor is a facilitator, and learning has to be based on prior knowledge. There's an old saying, tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I'll understand. Now this has been around for years, but this is probably the most important saying that we can think about when we come to teaching adults. You sit them in a classroom in rows in a lecture, they're going to forget. They're going to only retain 5% of that knowledge after 24 hours. Show me, and I may remember. You show them through demonstration, that might come up through 30%. Involve me, and I'll understand. You're starting to get into the 80s and 90s% if you involve the students. That's where we need to be. That's what this entire course is about, the involvement of our students and helping them build the full package for their future. I do need to give a couple people credits on this because they did share their PowerPoint slide decks with me from a couple different presentations, and it actually helped me build this presentation a number of years ago. Patricia Farley is probably no longer a doctoral student. She's now graduated. This is a couple years ago. Okay, very important to give her credit from Walden University. Linda Larson Carr is at the UA College of Medicine. Again, need to give her credit. She is actually in their educational training department and is a great resource. So thanks to them for sharing some of their PowerPoint slides, because they actually gave me some ideas for this presentation when I did it a number of years back.